Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett just lit up Capitol Hill with one of the most powerful speeches we've seen this session. In a fiery response, she called out Attorney General Pam Bondi for going on Fox News and, according to Crockett, sending her a threat. Crockett didn't back down. She called it out for what it was: dangerous, divisive, and politically motivated. But she didn't stop there. She exposed how the new DOJ has turned into a tool for retribution instead of justice, and how this toxic rhetoric is literally putting members of Congress in danger. This wasn't just a clapback, it was a full-blown warning about what happens when power is abused. Let's get into it.
Thank the chairman. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I first just want to begin with a news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present, because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric, and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear, because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting Attorney General go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information, and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'm gonna say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook, because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him, because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cybercrime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion. Or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm going to walk in with a level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me, and that is what it looks like to serve. Thank you.
This week, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett did what very few politicians have the courage to do. She looked power in the face and called it out. During a tense Judiciary Committee hearing, Crockett delivered an emotional, fearless response to Attorney General Pam Bondi after Bondi went on Fox News, or as Crockett brilliantly called it, faux news, and, according to her, sent a political threat her way. Now, let's pause right there. Think about what that means. The sitting Attorney General of the United States allegedly used a national media platform to publicly intimidate a member of Congress, all because Crockett spoke her mind. If that doesn't tell you how far we've drifted from democratic norms, I don't know what does. Crockett didn't mince words. She opened by saying something that instantly broke through the noise. News alert, Joe Biden is not the president anymore. That was her way of snapping Republicans out of their time warp, because half the hearing was still obsessed with litigating the past instead of legislating the present. And she's absolutely right. Congress isn't supposed to be a courtroom. It's supposed to be the place where laws are written, where progress happens, where leaders actually govern. But instead, what we've been watching, especially from the right, is a political circus where hearings are used to air grievances, settle scores, and rile up the base. And Crockett wasn't having it. She reminded everyone in that room that their job isn't to perform for Fox News clips, it's to serve the American people. Then came the turning point, her direct response to Bondi's Fox appearance. Crockett laid it out plain. When the nation's top law enforcement officer goes on TV to send thinly veiled threats against a sitting member of Congress, that's not law and order, that's intimidation. And she didn't just defend herself, she defended the principle of democracy itself. Because when powerful officials use their position to silence dissent or weaponize fear, it puts every elected official and every citizen at risk. And here's the part that hit hardest. Crockett reminded the committee that threats against lawmakers are rising across the board, not just against Democrats, but against everyone. She and even the Republican chairman of the subcommittee agree on that. Yet, instead of lowering the temperature, Bondi's behavior poured gasoline on the fire. She didn't just threaten a colleague, she normalized the idea that disagreement deserves punishment. That's the kind of rhetoric that gets people hurt. Crockett's words were a gut check for everyone watching. This isn't about left versus right, it's about right versus wrong. She spoke about selective enforcement, how some agencies show up when powerful people call, but look the other way when ordinary citizens, or certain communities, ask for help. She connected the dots between unequal justice and unequal representation. Then she turned to something deeper, something that spoke to her roots. Crockett shared how, when she first became a public defender, she told her boss to hire her because she was black, not as a gimmick, but as a reflection of representation that matters. Because she knew she could build trust and understanding with people who'd been systematically ignored or mistreated by the system. That moment was powerful. It was her way of saying representation isn't about tokenism, it's about bringing lived experience into the halls of power. And let's be real, when Crockett said, "I don't like Elon Musk, I think he's a crook," she wasn't just taking a swipe. She was calling out how billionaires get to play by a different set of rules. She exposed how wealth and privilege can twist justice, how people with connections get government protection while others get ignored or criminalized. That's the truth millions of Americans feel every day, and she had the courage to say it out loud. Her closing words were pure conviction. Crockett said all she wants is for law enforcement to show up when there's an actual crime, not to target people for their politics, not to weaponize investigations, and not to pick and choose whose lives matter. She wants a system that values fairness and equality, not fear and favoritism. In a time when threats, intimidation, and disinformation dominate the political landscape, Jasmine Crockett reminded us what moral leadership looks like. She didn't hide behind talking points, she didn't sugarcoat the danger, she stood up for principle, and that's rare. And that's why this moment matters. Because if public officials can be threatened into silence for speaking truth to power, democracy itself is at risk. Crockett's speech wasn't just a clapback, it was a warning and a promise. A warning that authoritarianism thrives when we stop standing up, and a promise that she and others like her won't back down. We need more leaders who fight like Jasmine Crockett, who believe in justice that's real, not performative, who see leadership as service, not showmanship. Because in the end, it really isn't about left versus right. It's about right versus wrong. And that's exactly what the Blue Brief is here to highlight: truth, courage, and accountability in the face of power. If you believe in that mission, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your thoughts below. Because in times like these, silence isn't neutrality, it's surrender.